The enormous black wolf beneath the oak looked powerful enough to conquer a kingdom. Unfortunately, he had recently lost an argument with a porcupine. The porcupine appeared to have won by targeting his dignity. Fenella Mossmere stood over him with a basket of feverfew on one arm and absolutely no sympathy on her face. Sympathy encouraged difficult patience. Experience had taught her that difficult patients already possessed plenty of encouragement. The wolf opened one amber eye. A quill trembled beside his nose. 3 more rose from his shoulder, and an impressive cluster decorated his hindquarters. Fenella lowered her basket into the sunny moss. Warm pine resin scented the air. Bees worked among the white woodland flowers, and somewhere downhill, a stream discussed stones in a cheerful murmur. It was a beautiful day to discover a dying predator dressed like a badly made pincushion. "Do not bite me," Fenella warned. "If you do, I will save the ones in your backside for last." The wolf's eye narrowed. That was encouraging. Offended patients usually had more life in them than unconscious ones. Fenella crouched outside the reach of his jaws. She was an Omega with no guild medallion, no grand clinic, and no permission to treat anyone wealthier than a turnip farmer. None of those facts kept injured creatures from finding her. She held one palm above his ribs. A faint warmth gathered beneath her skin. Her small healing gift could sense broken flesh, slow bleeding, and ease pain. It could not close a deep wound with a miracle. It certainly could not remove 80 or more barbed quills. The warmth returned to her in sharp, scattered pulses. His shoulder was torn. His mouth was dry. Several quills had sunk dangerously deep, and exhaustion lay over everything like wet wool. Fenella studied the flattened ferns uphill, a set of large paw prints cut between the trees. Smaller prints followed them, then divided near the ravine. There had been a chase before the porcupine supplied its opinion. "You have enemies," she murmured. The wolf closed his eye, and poor judgment, those often travel together. His lip lifted just enough to show one white fang. Fenella nodded. "Excellent. We understand each other." King Emeric Hawkridge understood only that a strange Omega had insulted him 3 times in less than a minute. Under ordinary circumstances, one growl from him could silence 12-pack leaders. At present, drawing breath hurt, and one quill near his tail shifted whenever he considered growling. The previous night had begun with a discreet inspection of a border medicine storehouse. It had ended with 4 hired rogues pursuing him through rain and darkness. Emeric had taken wolf form to outrun them. Near dawn, movement had exploded from a narrow hollow. He had lunged, expecting an assassin. The movement belonged to a furious porcupine protecting its den. Emeric's first contact with its tail had been unfortunate. His attempt to leap away had placed one paw on wet moss. The resulting slide had introduced the rest of him to the porcupine with breathtaking efficiency. He had escaped both the animal and the rogues. He had even crossed the stream to hide his scent. Then his legs had failed beneath this oak. He had expected loyal guards or death. He had not expected a woman who smelled of rosemary to threaten his backside. Fenella touched the shaft of the quill beside his nose. His jaw tightened. "This one will tear if you move," she explained. "I can remove it here, or you can keep it as decoration." Emeric remained still. Fenella gripped the shaft with the small forceps from her herb basket. She pulled in one smooth motion. Blood welled through black fur. Her free hand covered the wound, sending a thread of warmth into the damaged skin. Pain flashed through her own cheek. It vanished after one breath, leaving her dizzy but satisfied. The wolf watched her more carefully. "Yes, I felt that," Fenella told him. "No, it does not make us friends." She cleaned the tiny puncture with water from her flask. It was the only quill she dared remove in the forest. The rest required better light, boiled tools, and enough cloth to manage the bleeding. Getting him home presented a larger problem. Fenella was stronger than most people expected. People saw her narrow shoulders, plain brown dress, and patched green cloak. Then they handed her a sack of flour and looked alarmed when she carried 2. The wolf, however, weighed as much as a cupboard filled with stones. He also possessed more sharp points than the cupboard. Fenella cut 2 straight saplings with her hatchet. She threaded her cloak between them and reinforced it with gathering rope. The result was an ugly but reliable drag litter. "I need you to roll onto it," she told the wolf. Emeric considered the litter before glancing back at her. His expression conveyed a royal refusal, although Fenella mistook it for ordinary male stubbornness. "You can stay here," she offered. "The flies will be delighted." A fly landed on his ear. Emeric gathered his legs beneath him. His forelegs held for half a second. His hind legs objected, his chest struck the moss, and the cluster in his rump met the ground. The sound that left him was not a growl. It was too brief, high, and offended. Fenella politely examined a tree until his dignity returned. "We will call that progress," she decided. She eased him onto the litter, one careful section at a time. He tried to help by moving his front paws. She tried not to notice that an animal close to death was still determined to make the rescue look voluntary. Once he was settled, Fenella wrapped a strip of linen around his muzzle. She left it loose enough for breathing. Emeric bared a fang beneath it. "It is not personal," she assured him. "You are large, frightened, and full of holes. I would muzzle the king under similar circumstances." His remaining eye opened fully. Fenella missed the significance. She lifted the ends of the saplings and started downhill. The path to her cottage was less a path than a collection of roots that had agreed on a direction. The litter bumped over the first root. Emeric's head rose. It struck the second. Both amber eyes opened. At the third, he dug his front claws into the cloak. "That reaction is promising," Fenella observed between breaths. "You looked half dead 10 minutes ago." Emeric considered biting through the linen. A quill in his shoulder advised patience. Fenella dragged him around a fallen pine. Her boots slipped in last night's mud, yet she kept the litter level. Sweat dampened the hair at her temples. The healing warmth had already taken some strength, and hauling a royal wolf required the rest. Neither of them noticed the hooked quill until it caught a blackberry stem. Emeric surged forward with enough force to pull Fenella backward. She landed on the litter beside him. His rear legs kicked, the bush shook, and startled birds fled through the canopy. For one absurd moment, Omega and King stared at each other from 6 inches apart. "Marvelous," Fenella whispered. "You have recovered." Emeric's ears flattened. She followed his furious gaze to the blackberry stem. Understanding arrived. Fenella bit the inside of her cheek, freed the quill, and did not laugh until she had turned away. Her shoulders betrayed her. The Alpha King lowered his face onto his paws. If the rogues found him now, he might surrender from convenience. Fenella regained control and continued. She spoke to him whenever the slope steepened. Her voice was practical rather than soothing. It told him where she would turn, when the litter might tilt, and how long remained. Emeric did not need comfort. Kings did not need comfort. Still, his breathing began to match the calm rhythm of her words. Halfway home, Fenella smelled wolves. The scent came from the ridge behind them. It carried wet leather, sweat, and the bitter oil hunters used on bowstrings. Fenella stopped beneath a cedar. Emeric raised his head despite the pain. A low warning gathered in his chest. She pressed 2 fingers to her lips. Then she crushed a fistful of wild mint and mud across the bloody cloak. She rubbed the same mixture over her boots and the drag marks. Fenella pulled the litter into the stream and followed the shallow water downhill. Cold current soaked her skirt. It also swallowed their trail. 2 men appeared on the ridge several minutes later. They wore no pack colors. Both carried bows and moved with the wary balance of wolves in human shape. Fenella bent over the stream as though gathering watercress. The giant black wolf lay beneath willow branches behind her, covered by her green cloak. One man called down to ask whether she had seen a wounded animal. Fenella straightened with a handful of weeds. "I saw a squirrel with emotional difficulties." The hunter stared at her. She lifted the dripping plants. He had lost a nut. It was a private matter. The second hunter sniffed the wind. Mint and wet earth covered most scents. Fenella's own omega fragrance remained soft and harmless beneath them. The men exchanged a glance, then moved east along the ridge. Fenella waited until the forest quieted. When she pulled back the cloak, Emeric was studying her with new intensity. "I dislike strangers with bows," she explained. "They rarely improve an afternoon." His gaze dropped to her soaked boots, then to the heavy litter. Fenella sighed. "Do not become grateful yet. You still have approximately one forest attached to you." Her cottage stood in a clearing behind hazel shrubs. It had a stone chimney, a crooked porch, and a roof that leaked only where buckets could be placed. Bundles of herbs hung beneath the eaves. A faded wooden sign announced moss and mending. Someone had painted "no credit" below it in newer letters. Fenella dragged the litter through the door. The wolf's shoulders barely cleared the frame. His tail caught the jamb, and several quills scraped wood. He made the same high, offended sound. "I heard nothing," Fenella promised. Emeric gave her a look that had frightened ambassadors. Fenella propped the door open with her boot. "You may intimidate me after I remove the object beside your nipple." The ambassadorial look disappeared. Her cottage contained one main room, a narrow sleeping alcove, and a treatment table built for people of ordinary dimensions. The table took one look at Emeric and seemed prepared to resign. Fenella spread blankets beside the hearth instead. She boiled water, placed her tools in the bubbling pot, and lit 3 lamps. The air filled with steam, thyme, and clean linen. Emeric watched every movement. No guild healer had ever prepared a room with greater care. Fenella simply did it while muttering that large patients should carry their own furniture. She cut away the linen muzzle. "Here are the rules. You do not bite. You do not roll without warning. You do not pretend a wound is fine because you are embarrassed." Emeric blinked once. "That last rule was included specifically for you." Fenella placed an empty clay bowl near his shoulder. The first forest quill went into it with a dry click. She started with the easiest wounds. Each shaft required a firm grip and a straight pull. Porcupine quills carried tiny backward-facing barbs. A careless twist could leave fragments beneath the skin. The second quill came from his ear. The third left his upper shoulder. 4 through 9 emerged from the thick muscle beside his neck. Fenella counted each one aloud. The numbers gave Emeric something to follow besides pain. At 10, he stopped watching the forceps. At 14, his claws loosened from the blanket. At 17, Fenella called on her gift again. Warmth flowed from her palm into a puncture near his ribs. A matching sting crossed her side. She breathed through it and kept her hands steady. Emeric noticed the tremor in her fingers. He nudged her wrist away. "I decide when I am finished," she told him. The wolf nudged harder. Fenella met his gaze. For the first time, she saw concern rather than suspicion or injured pride. 5 minutes, she conceded. "Then we continue." Emeric lowered his head. He had commanded armies, negotiated grain treaties, and endured 3 coronation banquets. None of those experiences had prepared him for winning an argument by pushing an omega with his nose. Fenella drank water and ate a heel of bread. She offered him a piece. He sniffed it, then turned his face away. "It was baked this morning." His expression remained critical. "Forgive me, I did not realize I had rescued the Duke of Breakfast." Emeric was a king, which made the error worse. He accepted the bread to prevent further speculation. They resumed at sunset. Golden light moved across the floorboards. Outside, finches settled in the hedge, and the forest softened into evening sounds. Fenella removed quills from his forelegs, chest, and belly. She worked around the deepest wounds, marking them with charcoal on a scrap of parchment. Her gift showed where each barb ended, but her hands still had to follow. At 31, Emeric began biting the corner of a pillow. Fenella pretended not to see. At 38, he bit through it. Feathers drifted between them. Fenella plucked one from his nose. "That pillow cost 4 coppers." Emeric stared at the torn fabric. You now owe me 4 coppers and a door frame. The wolf glanced toward the door. Your tail removed a piece. His ears angled backward. Fenella wrote the debt beside her wound diagram. She had no expectation of collecting it. The gesture improved her mood. The 46th quill came from the lower edge of his chest. Fenella wiped her tools, moved the lamp closer, and parted the thick fur above the next wound. Emeric saw where she was looking. His front paw came down over his chest. Fenella paused. Move your paw. He did not. The quill is very close to your nipple. The paw pressed harder. Fenella sat back on her heels. The mighty black wolf, pursued by killers and pierced in 80 places, had finally located the boundary of his courage. You are covered in fur, she reminded him. No one can see anything. His stare told her that this was not the point. Fenella picked up a small towel. She arranged it over his chest with solemn care, leaving only the quill exposed through a narrow fold. Your modesty is protected. Emeric slowly removed his paw. Fenella pulled the shaft before he could reconsider. It landed in the bowl with a click louder than the others. 47, she announced. Your honor survived. The wolf looked away. Mostly. By midnight, the bowl held 62 quills. Fenella's back ached, her healing hand felt packed with ice, and Emeric's breathing had grown shallow. She spread salve over the cleaned punctures. The mixture smelled of pine, comfrey, and bitter yarrow. Emeric sneezed twice, then looked offended by his own nose. Fenella covered him with a blanket. We stop until morning. He tried to rise. No. Emeric planted one forepaw. Fenella planted both hands on his shoulders and pushed him down. She was astonished when he yielded. He was astonished that she had moved him at all. You are staying here, she informed him. Whatever chased you can wait until you possess enough blood to make bad decisions properly. The wolf studied her face. Lamplight warmed her brown skin and caught copper threads in her dark hair. Fatigue had softened her sharp mouth, but not the resolve in her hazel eyes. Emeric lowered his head onto the surviving pillow. Fenella slept in a chair with her boots on and the forceps beside her hand. She woke twice to check his breathing. The third time, she found his nose resting against her ankle. She told herself he had moved toward the hearth. Emeric told himself exactly the same lie. Morning arrived with wood smoke, weak sunlight, and Fenella's stiff neck. She opened her eyes to find the wolf awake. He was watching the door while his body blocked the space between her chair and the entrance. Guarding me will not reduce your bill, she told him. His tail moved once beneath the blanket. It struck a stool and knocked over the glass jar she had prepared for the quills. Fenella caught the jar before it broke. The wolf closed his eyes. Your bill has increased. After broth and another argument about bread, treatment resumed. The remaining quills clustered around his back legs and hindquarters. Fenella arranged folded blankets beneath him, allowing access without forcing him onto the worst wounds. Numbers 63 through 70 went smoothly. 71 required cutting away a knot of fur. 72 had bent beneath the skin, and her healing sense guided the tip free. Pain struck her own thigh. Her vision dimmed. Emeric twisted toward her, knocking the forceps from her hand. His growl filled the cottage. It was not aimed at her. It was aimed at the pain he could smell on her. Fenella leaned against the bed until the room steadied. I warned you about rolling. The wolf's nose pressed beneath her elbow. I am fine. He pushed her toward the chair. You are very controlling for someone wearing no trousers. Emeric froze. Fenella smiled despite herself. Sit still, your naked grace. If he had possessed a human voice, he might have told her that no one had spoken to him that way since childhood. Instead, he waited until she drank water before returning to the blankets. The next 10 quills emerged over 2 careful hours. Fenella counted the final click and examined the bowl. 82. Relief loosened Emeric's shoulders. Fenella placed her palm over his back. Healing warmth traveled across the cleaned wounds. Most answered with dull soreness. One sharp pulse remained. Her hand moved lower. Emeric's relief vanished. Fenella followed the sensation toward the inner edge of his left hind leg. His tail dropped across the area like a gate. There is one more. The wolf backed into the corner. It is near the top of your leg. He sat down. Pain made him leap up again. He wedged his hindquarters between the bed and the wall, keeping his tail clamped tight. Fenella stared at him. You cannot hide an injury by sitting on it. Emeric attempted exactly that, more carefully this time. It will become infected. He looked toward the window. The barb may travel deeper. His ears flattened, but his tail remained fixed. Fenella folded her arms. You might lose the use of that region. Both ears rose. For one hopeful second, she thought reason had won. Then the wolf lowered his head and pushed the blanket over himself. The blanket mound retreated farther into the corner. Fenella had treated millers, hunters, infants, and one blacksmith who fainted whenever anyone mentioned blood. Never had she conducted a medical negotiation with a moving blanket. She placed a strip of roasted meat on the floor. The wolf's nose appeared. His tail did not. Fenella moved the meat closer to her forceps. The nose vanished. She tried privacy. She hung a sheet across half the room and stood behind it. You may position yourself. I will only uncover the wound. The blanket remained silent. She tried professional dignity. She explained that bodies were bodies, injuries were injuries, and healers had no interest in embarrassing their patients. One amber eye appeared above the blanket. It contained profound disbelief. Fenella lost patience shortly before noon. Very well. I will fetch the cooper, his 3 sons, and the 2 women from the bakery. They can hold you down. The blanket flew off. Emeric stood rigid in the corner. Horror had accomplished what medicine could not. Fenella picked up a clean sheet and approached slowly. I thought that might help. The wolf showed her every tooth he owned. Save the expression for the cooper. Emeric's teeth disappeared. Fenella draped the sheet over his back and hindquarters. She arranged it so only a hand-sized area of his inner upper leg remained visible. The quill sat beneath dense fur, dangerously close to sensitive flesh, but not within it. Her humor faded. The skin around the shaft was hot and swollen. Leaving it would have caused a serious infection. Hold still, she murmured. This one matters. Emeric turned his head away. His claws scored the floorboards, yet he did not move when her fingers touched his leg. Fenella sent a thin ribbon of healing warmth around the wound. The barb's shape appeared to her as pressure beneath her own skin. She adjusted the forceps, followed its angle, and pulled. The quill came free. Emeric exhaled so hard that the sheet fluttered. Fenella pressed clean cloth to the puncture. Once the bleeding slowed, she carried the quill to the bowl. It landed on the others with a crisp wooden note. 83, she announced. You officially lost to an opponent 1/10 your size. Emeric kept his face turned toward the wall. Fenella transferred the quills into the glass jar. She sealed it and placed it on the highest shelf. I am keeping these until I know none broke inside you. Amber eyes shifted toward the jar. His gaze returned to her face. Fenella recognized the expression. No. You may not destroy the evidence. The Alpha King lowered his head onto his paws. He had survived 4 assassins, a ravine, blood loss, and emergency treatment from an unlicensed Omega. His reputation now depended on a glass jar and a woman who labeled everything. Fenella's next concern was keeping 83 punctures clean. Her cottage floor collected ash, crushed leaves, and whatever mud entered on her boots. A wolf's tail could gather all 3 before breakfast. She searched her sewing chest and found the remains of an old festival curtain. The fabric was sturdy, soft, and covered with yellow flowers. Emeric watched her measure his waist with a piece of string. Suspicion returned to his eyes. Recovery trousers, Fenella explained. Loose around the wounds, open around the tail. His gaze fixed on the flowers. Those are medicinal flowers. They were not. They looked like cheerful suns drawn by an optimistic child. Fenella worked for an hour while he slept. She padded the inside with worn linen and tied the sides with soft cords. The finished garment resembled a pair of enormous bloomers. Emeric woke, saw them, and tried to stand. His injured leg folded. Fenella caught his shoulder before he fell onto the hearth. "You may wear these," she told him, "or I can wash your rear wounds after every trip outside." Emeric looked toward the door, then at her hands. 5 minutes later, the Alpha King wore yellow flowers across his backside. Fenella stepped back to inspect the fit. The tail opening worked, the padding protected his skin, and the ties sat clear of every puncture. Very dignified. Emeric stared into the cold ashes. "You need a name," Fenella continued. "I cannot keep calling you Wolf." His head turned slowly. "Briar? Needle? Lord Pointy?" His upper lip rose at each suggestion. Fenella considered the glass jar. "Prickle." Emeric walked away. The recovery trousers made his departure less impressive than intended. One padded leg slipped lower than the other. He stopped beside the table and glared at the wall. "Prickle it is," Fenella decided. During the next 3 days, Prickle proved to be the most demanding patient Fenella had ever treated. He refused thin broth, objected to the treatment blanket, and inspected every cup before drinking. He also expected the door to be opened for him. Fenella did not open it on the 4th request. Emeric sat before the latch, waiting. Fenella continued grinding willow bark. The stone pestle made patient circles in the mortar. The wolf glanced at her. Then he looked at the door. "You have a nose," she reminded him. "Use it." Emeric knew how doors worked. He had servants who handled them because rulers were expected to enter rooms without wrestling architecture. He pressed his nose beneath the latch. The door opened inward and struck him between the eyes. Fenella covered a cough. The wolf went outside without looking back. He returned with a branch longer than the room. Fenella had asked for firewood, but Emeric had approached the task with royal scale. The branch caught both sides of the doorway. He pulled harder, removing a hook and half a bundle of lavender. Fenella surveyed the damage. 4 coppers for the pillow, 2 for the frame, 1 for the hook. The wolf dropped the branch. "The lavender was already old. I will forgive that." He began bringing shorter pieces. By afternoon, a neat pile stood beside the hearth. Fenella found each length nearly identical, as if a palace quartermaster had inspected it. Prickle might dislike ordinary doors, but he understood organization. He also understood debt collection. A cooper arrived with a split thumb and an unpaid bill from Summer. While Fenella cleaned the cut, Prickle settled behind her chair. The cooper promised payment after the next market day. The wolf lifted his head. The cooper changed his promise to that afternoon. Fenella glanced over her shoulder. "We do not threaten patience." Emeric had shown no teeth. He had merely looked like a king considering taxation. "He did not threaten me," the cooper assured her. "He reminded me of my values." Payment arrived before sunset, along with a smoked ham and a new door hook. Fenella placed 3 copper coins beside Prickle's bowl. "Your commission!" He pushed them back toward her. "Very noble." Emeric rested his chin on his paws. The movement hid his pleasure. As strength returned, he began guarding her. At night, he slept between Fenella's chair and the door. During the day, he followed her through the herb garden, pretending to inspect the fence. Fenella noticed the pattern and chose not to mention it. She had grown used to the weight of his presence. It was quiet, warm, and unexpectedly considerate. He never stepped on her seedlings. He carried baskets by their handles. When her healing gift left her shivering, he pressed his body against her legs until the cold passed. The first time he did it, Fenella buried both hands in the thick fur at his neck. Emeric went still. Her fingers found the place behind his ear. His hind leg nearly moved. The Alpha King stopped it through force of will. Fenella scratched the same spot again. A deep sound rolled through his chest, closer to contentment than warning. "So that is where your dignity went," she murmured. Emeric stepped away, but only after she had finished. The glass jar remained a source of conflict. Fenella moved it to the shelf above her treatment table. Every morning, she found it somewhere else. Once it appeared behind the flower bin. Once she discovered it beneath a folded towel. On the third morning, it sat outside under a bucket. Prickle. The wolf was asleep beside the hearth. You cannot hide medical records. One ear rotated toward her. Fenella returned the jar to its shelf. Then she added a label in large black letters. 83 porcupine quills removed from one very stubborn wolf. Emeric read it from across the room. He opened the door himself and disappeared into the garden. Fenella laughed until her side hurt. The sound followed him outside. Emeric stood among the sage plants and listened. Laughter had been rare in his palace since his father's death. When it appeared, it often stopped as he entered. Fenella's laughter had begun because of him. Oddly, it did not feel cruel. That evening, he returned with a bundle of wintergreen roots. They grew beyond the northern ridge and sold for more than the damaged pillow. Fenella recognized the offering. She crouched before him and touched her forehead to his. Debt settled. Emeric breathed in rosemary, flower, and the faint green scent of her gift. Something inside him became dangerously peaceful. His pursuers still existed. His council might already believe him dead. Every lost day gave Halric Denvain more time to erase evidence from the royal medicine stores. Emeric should have left as soon as he could walk. Instead, he remained because one deep puncture beside his ribs had not closed. That was the reason he gave himself. The fact that Fenella smiled when he entered the cottage had no relevance at all. On the fifth night, a cold rain swept through the forest. It rattled the roof and drove water through the usual leak above the table. Fenella placed a pot beneath it. Prickle watched the drops strike the metal. It sings, Fenella told him. The pot answered with an irregular plink. Emeric looked unconvinced. Fenella moved a second pot beneath another leak. Now it has harmony. Wind pushed smoke down the chimney. She coughed, opened the vent, and sat beside him on the floor. The cottage smelled of damp wool, herbs, and the onion soup cooling near the hearth. Fenella checked the wound beside his ribs. The edges had finally begun to knit. Her palm warmed the skin, and Emeric felt the familiar easing of pain. The answering strain hit her harder than usual. Her shoulders sagged. He pulled away at once. I was not finished. The wolf stood and took her sleeve gently between his teeth. He led her toward the bed. Fenella allowed herself to be pushed onto the mattress. You have become very bossy in my house. Emeric nudged a blanket across her lap. I rescued you. He nudged the blanket higher. I pulled a quill from a location neither of us will mention. The blanket went over her face. Fenella laughed beneath it. Prickle lay across the foot of the bed, his body a warm barrier against the draft. She fell asleep to rain, fire, and his steady breathing. Near dawn, Emeric's fever broke. His injured body could no longer spare the strength required to hold its wolf shape. The mattress shifted. Bones moved with a low series of cracks, and the weight at Fenella's feet changed shape. Fenella slept through all of it. Emeric woke cold, human, and entirely uncovered below the waist. For a king celebrated for calm decisions, his first response lacked strategy. He grabbed the nearest blanket and wrapped it around himself. It was the yellow flower blanket. His second response was to assess the room. His clothes were somewhere beyond the ridge, torn during his shift. Fenella slept beside him with one hand curled near her cheek. Dawn had not yet reached the windows. Emeric could shift again, but his wounds were still fragile. Another transformation might tear them open. He tried to stand quietly. The flower blanket snagged beneath Fenella's knee. Her eyes opened. Her attention traveled from his bare shoulder to the strange man's face. Then she reached beside the bed and seized the iron frying pan. Emeric raised both hands. The blanket slipped dangerously. He caught it against his hips. Fenella stood on the mattress, pan lifted. Who are you? Emeric searched for an explanation that did not begin with an account of his rear wounds. I can explain. Fenella's gaze traveled over the fading punctures on his chest. It stopped on the small square of linen attached near his left nipple. Her pan lowered 1 inch. She saw the bandage on his shoulder, the charcoal mark beside his ribs, and the distinctive green wrap high on his inner thigh. Recognition widened her eyes. Prickle? King Emeric Hawkridge had endured battlefield surgery without making a sound. That achievement deserted him beneath a flower blanket in an Omega's bed. That is not my name. Fenella lowered the pan. So you do speak. Emeric kept one hand on the blanket. In this form. She stepped off the mattress and circled him. Her healer's gaze checked every injury with embarrassing efficiency. Your name, she prompted. He could not give the name every citizen knew. Not until he understood whether the assassins had allies nearby. Emeric Hawk. The lie was close enough to answer naturally. His childhood nurse had called him Emeric Hawk when he climbed palace roofs. Fenella planted both hands on her hips. Occupation? Royal Scout. That explains the manners. He was unsure which manners she meant. Fenella glanced toward the treatment shelf. Did you understand everything I said while you were a wolf? Emeric considered lying again. Then he remembered the label on the jar. Yes. Color rose along her cheeks. It pleased him until he realized why. Everything? Fenella asked. Every word. Her attention dropped to the green bandage on his thigh. Emeric's own face warmed. Fenella recovered first. Good. Then I do not need to repeat the infection lecture. She crossed to her clothes chest and threw him a plain linen shirt. It had belonged to her brother and would not close across Emeric's shoulders. The only trousers she could offer had belonged to a tall woodcutter who paid medical debts in clothing. Emeric pulled them on behind the hanging treatment sheet. They ended above his ankles. Fenella inspected him when he emerged. A cold, powerful man with black hair and golden brown eyes stood in her tiny cottage. His bearing suggested castles. His bare ankles suggested poor planning. You look less dangerous as a wolf, she decided. Emeric adjusted the tight shirt. Most people hold the opposite view. Most people did not meet your recovery trousers. He glanced toward the folded yellow garment. Burn them. They are reusable medical equipment. I will buy you new equipment. Fenella heard the easy certainty in his voice. A royal scout should not speak as though replacing half a sewing chest required no thought. Scouting pays well. Emeric paused. Sometimes. Her eyes narrowed. He had given her a false surname. She knew it as surely as she knew Yarrow from Ragwort. Yet he had been pursued, nearly killed, and hunted to her stream. Fenella decided that demanding truth from a half-dressed patient could wait until breakfast. Sit, she ordered. Changing shape reopened 2 wounds. Emeric sat at the treatment table. The wood creaked beneath him. Fenella untied the bandage near his ribs. Human skin made the closeness different. Warmth radiated from his chest. His breath shifted whenever her fingers approached a tender place. You were less tense when you had fur, she observed. I had fewer concerns about propriety. Fenella looked up. Their faces were close enough that she saw darker flecks around his irises. Propriety died during Quill 47. One corner of Emeric's mouth moved. It was not quite a smile, but it changed his severe face. Fenella forgot the next bandage for half a heartbeat. He noticed. Is something wrong? Emeric asked. Your expression moved. I was checking for fever. His almost smile deepened. Naturally. Fenella tightened the clean wrap with slightly more force than required. Emeric inhaled sharply. That was for the false surname, she informed him. His smile vanished, confirming her suspicion. They reached an agreement before breakfast. Emeric could remain until his deepest wounds closed. He would provide labor in place of payment. Fenella would not ask about his mission, and he would not bring armed strangers into her garden. The last condition depended more on hope than authority. Human Emeric proved less useful than Wolf Emeric. He knew how to hold a sword, read military maps, and judge the strength of a fortification wall. He did not know how much kindling belonged beneath a cooking fire. His first attempt filled the cottage with smoke. Fenella opened both windows. Were you trying to signal your enemies? Emeric stood beside the smoking hearth with soot across one cheek. The wood is defective. It worked yesterday. It has declined. She took the fire iron from him and rearranged the logs. Flames rose within moments. Emeric watched with the concentration he usually reserved for border maps. Small pieces first, Fenella explained. Fire needs room to breathe. Emeric objected that fire should obey. That explains why it dislikes you. He attempted breakfast next. Fenella gave him oats, water, and one simple instruction. Emeric interpreted the task as a military operation and increased the heat to save time. The porridge burned to the bottom of the pot while remaining wet on top. Fenella examined the result. That is impressive. Emeric relaxed slightly. You have created 2 failures in one container. He ate the blackened portion without complaint. Fenella made fresh oats for herself. By noon, Emeric had split 3 logs and 1 chopping block. The axe head buried itself in the earth after his final swing. Fenella leaned against the fence. Do Royal Scouts usually execute firewood? Emeric blamed the chopping block for being unstable. It had been stable for 12 years. Its decline was sudden. She laughed, and Emeric found that he would willingly destroy another block to hear it again. He became useful in other ways. He repaired the loose shutter, reset 2 fence posts, and carried a sack of grain from the village without effort. He also observed details Fenella missed. He noticed boot prints near the western hedge. He found a waxed thread caught on a hawthorn branch. The dark thread came from a hunter's bowstring. The rogues had located the clearing. Emeric did not tell Fenella immediately. That evening, he checked the door latch twice and moved the heavy treatment table against the weakest window. Fenella watched from the hearth. Expecting the furniture to attack? The window frame is loose. The frame was loose this morning. He met her gaze. Fenella set down her spoon. They found us. Emeric disliked how quickly she understood him. He disliked even more that relief accompanied it. Someone came near the hedge, he admitted. We should leave before dawn. Fenella looked around the cottage. This crooked building held her medicines, her mother's notebooks, and every possession she had kept through lean winters. Fear tightened her throat, but her hands remained steady. Fenella asked where he intended to take them. A royal watch post lies 1 day north. And why would royal soldiers protect a scout who refuses to give his surname? Emeric had no useful answer. Fenella rose and began packing herbs. I will prepare enough salve for 2 days. You will tell me the truth before we reach that post. Fenella, you know my name because I trusted you with it. Do not use it as a distraction. Her voice stayed calm. That made the rebuke sharper. Emeric inclined his head. Before we arrive, you will have the truth. It was the best promise he could safely make. Rain strengthened after dark. They took turns keeping watch. Fenella slept first while Emeric sat near the window with her hatchet across his knees. Near midnight, a branch snapped outside. Emeric caught a scent beneath wet leaves. The same bitter bow oil drifted through the shutter. He crossed the room and touched Fenella's shoulder. Her eyes opened at once. 2 at the back, he whispered. At least 1 near the road. Fenella slid from bed and reached for her herb satchel. She did not ask whether he was certain. The first arrow entered through the window and struck the table. Emeric shifted before the shaft stopped vibrating. The transformation tore the borrowed shirt and sent a fresh line of blood through his shoulder fur. The black wolf placed himself between Fenella and the broken shutter. You are paying for that shirt, she whispered, his ear turned toward her. Fenella threw a clay packet into the hearth. The packet burst, filling the cottage with thick green smoke. It smelled of pepper, pine pitch, and an herb that made eyes water violently. Men cursed outside. Emeric charged through the door. He struck the first rogue before the man could raise his bow. His jaws closed on leather rather than flesh, and he threw the attacker into the rain. The second rogue lunged from the herb garden. Fenella pulled a cord beside the steps. A drying rack dropped across his path, covering him in wet stockings and bundles of thyme. The man stumbled. Fenella hit him with the iron pan. That was my best time, she informed him. Emeric turned toward the road as another arrow passed through the smoke. His wounded leg buckled. He recovered, but Fenella saw the weakness. She seized the rope attached to her rain barrel and cut it. The heavy barrel rolled from its stand, gathering speed down the sloped yard. It struck the third attacker behind the knees. He landed in mud with an astonished grunt. The first rogue regained his feet and drew a short blade. Emeric's growl shook water from the porch roof. A horn answered from the northern trees. Blue-cloaked riders entered the clearing. Their leader dismounted before his horse fully stopped. He was a broad beta with a scar across his chin and a royal hawk embroidered on his cloak. The rogues fled toward the southern ridge. 2 riders pursued them. The beta remained, staring at the black wolf in torn flower trousers. His face passed through relief, confusion, and heroic restraint. Then he dropped to one knee. "Your Majesty." Rain tapped the leaves. Smoke rolled through the broken cottage window. Fenella stood on the porch with a frying pan in one hand and wet hair stuck to her cheek. Her gaze settled on the kneeling commander. Then she looked at Prickle. The black wolf closed his eyes. Fenella's voice became dangerously mild. "Your Majesty?" Commander Jory Vale made the mistake of looking up. His gaze passed from Fenella's pan to the flowered garment around his sovereign's hindquarters. The commander's mouth tightened until his scar turned white. Jory had followed the king's trail from the raided storehouse to the ravine. Broken Brush and the rogue's prince led his patrol north. The horn had sounded when they heard fighting near Fenella's clearing. Emeric shifted back to human form behind the smoke. Fenella threw him the least damaged blanket without taking her eyes from Jory. The commander rose and faced the road with military precision. "I saw nothing unusual." "Excellent," Emeric answered from beneath yellow flowers. "Continue doing that." Fenella stepped through the doorway. Rain darkened her brown dress and fury brightened her hazel eyes. "Emeric Hawk," she began. He secured the blanket around his waist. "Hawkridge." She repeated his claim of being a royal scout. "Alpha King." "Prickle." Emeric glanced at his commander. Jory developed a passionate interest in the damaged rain barrel. Fenella set down the pan before temptation improved her aim. She walked past the king and examined the 2 captured rogues. One remained tangled beneath the drying rack. The other lay groaning beside the barrel. Their clothes carried no insignia. Both had filed the maker's marks from their knives. Fenella found a sealed packet inside one coat, but rain had blurred the writing. Emeric approached carefully. "Are you hurt?" Fenella checked her arms and discovered a shallow cut from the broken window. "No thanks to the royal scout who brought assassins to my herb garden." His face tightened. "I intended to leave before they reached you." "You also intended to tell me the truth." "I did." Fenella looked at Jory. "Did he?" The commander weighed loyalty against survival. "His Majesty often intends several worthy things before breakfast." Emeric's stare could have frozen soup. Jory bowed. "I will supervise the prisoners." He moved away with suspicious speed. Emeric reached for Fenella's cut. She stepped back. The distance between them was small, but he felt it more sharply than any quill. "I hid my title because the men hunting me had help inside my court," he explained. "Anyone who knew my location became a target." Fenella gestured toward her broken window. "That part worked beautifully." He accepted the blow. "You are right." Her anger paused. Powerful men rarely admitted that sentence without adding a speech. Emeric continued before caution returned. He described the false medicine inventories, his secret visit to the border storehouse, and the pursuit that followed. He did not minimize the danger or claim he had protected her through secrecy. He admitted that secrecy had become easier than trust. Fenella listened beneath the porch while rain drummed overhead. The frightened patient she had found beneath the oak had always been real. The man who carried grain and ruined porridge had also been real. Only his position in the world had changed. Unfortunately, that position included the power to lie without consequence. "Why did you stay after you could walk?" she asked. Emeric looked toward the damaged cottage. Firelight flickered through green smoke. His answer came without royal polish. Because you smiled when I came through the door. Fenella's anger did not disappear. It simply had to share space with something warmer. She pointed to the blood running from his reopened shoulder. Sit down before your romantic confession stains my steps. It was not a confession. Then stop looking disappointed. Emeric sat on the porch bench. The blanket exposed one long leg, and Jory turned the prisoners to face the opposite direction. Fenella cleaned the wound. Her hands remained professional, though the air between them had changed. Emeric watched her bent head and wished he possessed a title that could make honesty easier. Her palm warmed his skin. Pain eased from his shoulder and appeared as tension beside her mouth. Enough, he murmured. Fenella kept her hand in place. I decide that. You used too much strength during the fight. She looked up. You noticed while wearing a flower curtain and attacking 3 men? I can attend to several crises at once. A useful royal talent. The humor softened her voice. Emeric lifted his uninjured hand and touched a rain-dark strand beside her cheek. He stopped before pushing it back. May I? Fenella understood that he was asking about more than her hair. She could refuse. He would accept it. The certainty mattered. Fenella leaned forward and kissed him. For one heartbeat, Emeric remained perfectly still. Then his hand settled gently at the back of her neck. The kiss deepened, warm and careful, carrying smoke, rain, and 5 days of things neither had admitted. When Fenella drew away, the Alpha King looked less composed than he had during the attack. Jory cleared his throat from the yard. The prisoners are attempting to escape. They were not. Both men sat tied beside the fence, watching with great interest. Emeric did not turn. Commander, they have reconsidered, Jory reported. Fenella pressed her lips together. Laughter escaped anyway. The kiss did not erase the lie. It did prove there was something worth repairing after it. They left Fenella's cottage before sunrise, but they did not travel toward Hawkridge Palace. Jory spread a map across the wagon seat while rainwater dripped from his cloak. Stonegate lay 4 days north, beyond the quarry road and the Highwater Gorge. The 12-pack winter meeting would begin at noon on the 4th day. If Emeric failed to appear, Lord Halric Denvane could claim emergency authority until spring. Jory explained that Halric had announced the king's disappearance yesterday. He accused Emeric of abandoning the northern packs during a border threat. 5 leaders believed him, 3 remained uncertain, and 4 had heard nothing reliable. Emeric sat opposite him, in borrowed clothes and a green blanket. He had regained human form after the fight, but shifting had reopened his shoulder. His expression became colder with every sentence. Fenella tied a clean bandage beneath his shirt. How long did he expect the king to remain missing? Jory gave them a limit of 7 days. The old agreement allowed a Lord Protector to act when the king remained missing and failed to reach Stonegate. Emeric asked about the royal standard. Jory had recovered it from the abandoned border storehouse before following the pursuit trail. That mattered because the winter meeting was not tied to a building. During wars or avalanches, 7-pack leaders and the royal standard could establish a lawful meeting wherever they stood. Halric knew the rule. He also knew every leader planned to gather at Stonegate Hall. We can reach the hall by the King's Road in 3 days, Jory continued. Unfortunately, every assassin in the north knows the King's Road. Fenella examined the map. A faded line crossed the western forest, past an abandoned quarry, and joined Highwater Gorge below Stonegate. The Charcoal Road, she said. My mother used it when she treated the hill settlements. Jory frowned. That road disappeared 20 years ago. Only from expensive maps. Emeric studied her face. How long? 3 days if the old ferry still has a rope. 4 if your majesty insists on cooking. Jory looked between them. He had questions about the title, the kiss he had pretended not to witness, and the flowered blanket around his king. Wisdom encouraged him to ask none. They packed lightly. Fenella carried medicines, food, rope, her mother's trail notes, and the glass jar of quills. Emeric discovered the jar when it clicked against a cup. That stays here, he told her. Fenella insisted the jar proved no fragments remained inside him. Corvin can examine me later. Fenella asked who Corvin was. Emeric paused. In his urgency, he had referred to a royal physician Fenella had never met. A man who understands discretion, he answered. Jory turned his horse away to hide a smile. Fenella secured the jar deeper in the bag. Then he will understand why I kept all 83. Emeric climbed into the wagon with the silence of a defeated nation. They used the wagon only until the forest narrowed. 2 guards accompanied them, while the remaining riders took the prisoners toward a northern watch post. The captured rogues had refused to name their employer. Each insisted the pursuit orders came through a masked captain. Their orders contained one unusual restriction. They had been told to delay Emeric, frighten him, exhaust him, and drive him west. They were not to kill him unless capture became unavoidable. Emeric had assumed the restriction meant Halric wanted him alive for leverage. Jory now suspected something simpler. Halric wanted a late king, not a dead one. The wagon stopped where alder roots swallowed the old road. Fenella climbed down and studied the ground. Morning sunlight filtered through wet leaves. Mushrooms shone beside the path, and the air smelled of damp bark and crushed mint. She located a worn stone beneath the moss. A charcoal burner had carved an arrow into it generations earlier. This way. Emeric looked at the wall of ferns. There is no road. It is shy. Fenella pushed through the greenery. Jory followed with the royal standard wrapped beneath his cloak. Emeric came last, carrying 2 packs because he refused to let Fenella take the heavier one. His stride remained even for the first hour. During the second, the wound high on his inner thigh began to pull. Fenella noticed his left step shorten. Stop, Emeric continued. Patient. He stopped so abruptly that Jory nearly walked into him. Fenella pointed toward a fallen log. Sit. We have 4 days. You have one leg trying to become shorter than the other. Sit. Emeric sat. Jory and the guards moved down the path to examine the next bend with unnecessary enthusiasm. Fenella opened his trouser ties far enough to check the upper bandage. The last quill wound had reddened during the shift. It was not infected, but the surrounding muscle was strained. Emeric watched her hands. Your treatment appears less hostile in daylight. You are no longer hiding under a blanket. Emeric reminded her that the threat had involved 6 villagers, only hypothetically. Fenella spread cooling salve around the wound. His breath changed when her fingers moved higher. She glanced up. Pain? A complicated symptom. Does it improve when you stop flirting with your healer? Emeric considered the question. No, it becomes worse. Fenella tied the bandage and stood before he saw her smile. They resumed at a slower pace. Emeric did not complain, although he looked personally offended by moderation. Near midday, the old road crossed a clearing filled with waist-high grass. Fenella found a line of freshly cut branches along the eastern edge. Someone had opened a false trail toward a marsh. Jory knelt beside one stump. Sap still shone on the pale wood. Cut this morning, he observed. Fenella followed the false path for 20 steps. It ended in black water hidden beneath green reeds. A traveler moving quickly could lose a horse there. Emeric's jaw tightened. They know we left the cottage. They know this route, Jory corrected. Halric may have blocked every northern path before you vanished. Fenella broke the misleading branches and marked the safe direction with 3 stones. Others might use the road after them. She refused to leave a trap standing simply because they had avoided it. The delay cost half an hour. Emeric checked the sun twice while she worked. You can help or worry, Fenella told him. Helping is faster. He began carrying stones. They ate lunch beside a spring. Fenella distributed bread, hard cheese, and dried apples. Emeric accepted his portion, then searched the supplies. There is no meat. There was meat. Fenella pointed toward the bag he had carried from the cottage. A torn corner hung open. Grease marked the cloth, but the smoked ham was gone. Emeric examined the tear. The path took it. The shy road eats meat? That would explain its condition. Jory chewed his bread and looked at the sky. Fenella found black fur caught beside the tear. During the hurried departure, wolf form Emeric had nudged the pack away from the door. One claw had opened it. Fenella blamed him for losing their dinner. The bag failed. She informed him that the bag had been reliable for 9 years. Its decline was sudden. Fenella recognized his defense from the chopping block. She threw him an extra apple. They camped that evening beneath an overhanging cliff. Jory gathered wood, the guards set a watch, and Emeric announced he would build the shelter. Fenella handed him the canvas without argument. Some lessons required weather. Emeric understood military tents. The small traveling sheet insulted him through lack of structure. He tied one corner too high, another too low, and the final rope around a dead branch. The shelter stood for 12 proud seconds. Then the branch broke. Canvas folded over the Alpha King. Jory took one step forward. "Do not," Emeric warned from beneath the cloth. The commander stepped back. Fenella lifted one edge. "Should I fetch 6 villagers?" Emeric emerged with leaves in his hair. The branch was defective. "This forest suffers many sudden declines around you." She rebuilt the shelter lower and tighter. Emeric watched every knot. When rain began after dark, the canvas remained above them. He called that a shared success. Fenella called it supervised survival. They slept close because the overhang offered little space. Jory and the guards took the outer edge, leaving Fenella beside Emeric near the stone wall. Rain brought out the smell of earth and cold granite. Water whispered along the cliff. Fenella lay beneath one blanket, listening to Emeric breathe. His hand found hers in the dark. The first kiss still lived between them, warm and unresolved. Fenella wanted another. She also wanted the truth to finish settling before desire carried it away. Emeric seemed to understand. He did not pull her closer. His thumb moved once over her knuckles. "When this is over," he murmured, "I would like to court you properly." Fenella kept her voice low. "Will there be fewer assassins?" Emeric confirmed that fewer assassins were part of his plan. "Better food?" He guaranteed better food. "A tent built by someone else?" Emeric's pause lasted long enough to become an answer. Fenella smiled into the darkness. "Your proposal requires work." It was not a proposal, then stopped sounding nervous. His fingers tightened gently around hers. They slept that way while rain moved across the forest. The second morning began with a distant horn. Jory recognized the signal as a northern road call, but the rhythm was wrong. The final note repeated twice, directing travelers east toward the King's Road. Another false route, Emeric decided. Fenella listened to the echo fade. Or someone wants to know who answers. They did not answer. The charcoal road climbed into rocky ground. Pines replaced alder, and the air sharpened. Old wheel ruts appeared between exposed roots. Before noon, they found the first deliberate barrier. 3 trees lay across a narrow cut, their trunks sawn almost through before being pulled down. Going around would require descending a steep slope and climbing the other side. Clearing the trunks would take hours. Emeric examined the cuts. "Halric prepared this before I entered the forest." "Then he expected you to use hidden roads," Fenella said. Jory found a strip of red cloth tied beneath one trunk. The marking directed Halric's men toward the obstruction. Fenella walked along the rock wall. Her mother had drawn a small square beside this section of the trail. A charcoal storage tunnel once passed through the ridge. They found the entrance behind thorn bushes. The tunnel smelled of soot, wet stone, and old roots. It was narrow enough to force Emeric sideways. His pack caught on the wall. Fenella pushed from behind. "Your hand is on my lower back," he observed. "Your lower back is blocking Stonegate." "I only wish to clarify the medical purpose." She pushed harder. "Keep moving." The tunnel released them above the fallen trees. Jory emerged last with soot covering half his face. The commander looked at Fenella. "Did your mother's notes mention dignity?" She considered it poor emergency equipment. Emeric wiped soot from his coat. "Your mother sounds familiar. You would have feared her." "I fear very little." Fenella tapped the bag containing the quill jar. Emeric continued walking. Beyond the ridge, they saw smoke rising from a roadside shelter. It did not come from a cooking fire. Someone had burned the roof and scattered the stored blankets. An elderly roadkeeper sat beside the ruins with a cut above his brow. His name was Baron, and he recognized Fenella from her mother's visits. Fenella cleaned his wound while Emeric asked what happened. Baron reported that 6 armed men had arrived before dawn. They demanded information about travelers using the charcoal road. When he refused, they destroyed the shelter and took the ferry crank. The ferry lay another mile ahead. Without its crank, crossing the Stonewash River would be difficult. Emeric offered Baron a place with the royal escort. The old man refused to leave his shelter unattended, even though little remained. Fenella used a thread of healing warmth to slow the bleeding. Then she bound his brow and left food, 1 blanket, and directions to the nearest watch post. Baron caught her hand before she rose. "Your mother would be proud." The words stayed with Fenella as they continued. Emeric walked beside her without speaking. When the path narrowed, his shoulder touched hers. The quiet contact gave her space to feel both grief and comfort. They reached the river in late afternoon. The ferry waited on the opposite bank. Its rope still crossed the water, but the iron crank was gone from their side. Current foamed around dark rocks below. Jory suggested following the bank to a bridge 6 miles east. Fenella checked the sun. The detour would consume most of a day. Emeric removed his coat. "I can cross in wolf form and bring the ferry back." "Shifting reopened your wounds last night," Fenella reminded him. "We cannot lose a day." He was right, which did not make the plan good. Fenella examined the wooden guide wheel. A short length of chain remained where the crank had been. She could turn it if she created enough leverage. They cut a young pine, fitted it through the chain, and used the trunk as a long handle. Fenella, Emeric, and both guards leaned into it. The wheel groaned. The ferry moved 1 foot. Jory joined them. Mud slid beneath his boots. "Again," Fenella ordered. They turned the wheel in slow sections. Muscles burned, chain rattled, and the ferry crept through the current. Emeric's shoulder bandage darkened. Fenella saw it but did not stop. Halting with the ferry in midstream would waste their effort and strain him longer. After 20 minutes, the platform struck their bank. Everyone released the pine. Jory sat on the ground. 1 guard embraced the wheel. Emeric remained standing through royal stubbornness. Fenella pointed toward the ferry bench. "Patient." He sat immediately. Jory looked at the guards. "Remember that word." Fenella reopened Emeric's shirt. The shoulder puncture had split at one edge. Her gift found no deeper damage, but the muscle needed rest. "You cannot wolf shift again today." Emeric acknowledged the restriction. That means obeyed, not politely ignored. He found her definition unusually strict. She wrapped his shoulder while the ferry carried them across. Cold spray touched their faces. The river smelled of stone and pine needles. On the far bank, Fenella found fresh boot prints leading north. 1 print dragged at the heel. Another carried a triangular nail pattern used by Halrich's household guards. Their pursuers were less than an hour ahead. Emeric wanted to follow at once. Fenella wanted him to rest until the fresh bleeding stopped. They compromised by walking slowly, which satisfied neither of them and therefore seemed fair. The trail climbed away from the river. Evening light turned the pine trunks copper. Far below, water struck the ferry pilings with a hollow rhythm. Jory found another red cloth marker beside a fork. This one pointed toward the abandoned quarry. "They want us to see it," he said. Fenella opened her mother's notes. The quarry path met the main trail farther north, but it passed beneath unstable shelves of stone. Emeric studied the ridge. "An ambush." "Probably," Fenella agreed. "The useful question is whether they expect us to know that." They left the visible trail and entered the pines. Fenella guided them parallel to the quarry road, using old charcoal pits as cover. Darkness settled before they reached the first stone wall. The quarry formed a white wound in the mountain. Broken cranes leaned over deep terraces, and rainwater filled the lowest cuts. A small fire burned inside the foreman's hut. 3 men waited near the quarry road. 2 watched south. The third held a coil of rope attached to a wooden release lever. Above the road, a wagon full of waste stone rested on a sloping track. If Americ's party followed the marked path, the men would release the wagon. It would crash across the road and block the narrow passage. The falling stone might injure someone, but delay remained the clear purpose. Emeric signaled Jory toward the hut. The two guards circled behind the wagon. Fenella stayed beneath the trees because everyone had finally learned not to describe danger as a reason she should stand somewhere visible. The plan worked until a pebble rolled beneath Jory's boot. One man shouted. The watcher beside the lever pulled the rope. Fenella saw the wagon move. The guards were still crossing below it. She ran from the trees and seized the loose rope with both hands. The lever had released, but the line still passed around a wooden post. Fenella wrapped it once and dropped her weight backward. The rope burned through her gloves. The wagon continued down the track, slower now, but not stopped. Emeric reached her and caught the line. His wounded shoulder jerked. Together they hauled until the rope tightened around the post. The wagon stopped 3 feet above the crossing guards. One guard looked up at several tons of stone and quietly promised to donate money to every rope maker in the kingdom. Jory tackled the first ambusher beside the hut. The second fled into the quarry. The third charged Fenella with a short club. Emeric released the rope with one hand and turned. Fenella moved first. She drove one shoulder into the attacker's chest and used his momentum to send him over her hip. He struck the ground hard enough to forget his plan. Emeric stared down at him. "I am strong," Fenella reminded the king. "I noticed when you dragged me across a forest. You keep trying to rediscover it." He tied the fallen man with visible approval. Jory's prisoner carried no written orders, map, or seal. He did carry food wrapped in paper from Halrich's estate kitchen. The kitchen mark proved where the supplies originated, but not who issued the command. The captured man called himself Pelin. He resisted questions until Jory mentioned the 2 rogues already taken from Fenella's cottage. Pelin's loyalty weakened when he realized Halrich had not rescued anyone from failure. He admitted the purpose of every obstruction. Halrich's captain paid them by the day. A fallen tree, missing fairy crank, false horn, and blocked road were worth separate bonuses. "Why not kill the king?" Emeric asked. Pelin looked at the ground. "Dead kings become martyrs. Late kings become cowards." The answer landed harder than a threat. Halrich intended Emeric to arrive after noon. The temporary transfer of authority would appear lawful. Once winter roads closed, reversing it could take months. Halrich would command the army, control communication between packs, and decide which reports reached the council. Emeric asked what waited at Highwater Bridge. Pelin's fear became immediate. He claimed he did not know. His group had been forbidden to go near the gorge. Halrich's captain said the final delay required no witnesses. That refusal told them enough. Jory secured both prisoners in the foreman's hut with one guard. The man would take them to a watchpost at dawn. The remaining guard continued with Jory, Fenella, and Emeric. Before leaving, Fenella examined the rope burns across her palms. The skin was red but unbroken. Emeric took her hands. His anger at himself arrived before reason. "You should not have grabbed that line." Fenella reminded him that the wagon would have crushed his guards. "It could have taken your fingers." Fenella looked toward his shoulder. Blood had soaked through the new bandage because he grabbed the same rope. This argument has poor foundations. Emeric followed her gaze and discovered his own hypocrisy. "I am the king," he tried. "Your blood has not been informed." Jory became interested in locking the hut. Fenella cleaned Emeric's wound once more. She used no healing warmth this time. Her strength had been consumed by the wagon, and she refused to borrow from tomorrow. Emeric saw the fatigue around her eyes. He did not ask her to use the gift. Instead, he carried her pack with his uninjured arm. They left the quarry beneath a clear sky. Stars sharpened above the ridge, and the air smelled of cold stone. The trail ahead climbed toward an abandoned fire watchtower. They reached it near midnight. The tower was a square stone room with a wooden upper floor. Half the roof remained. The intact half covered a cold hearth, one bench, and enough dust to preserve the footprints of every mouse that had ever visited. There were no beds. Jory found 2 straw pallets in a storage alcove. One had collapsed into powder. The other leaned suspiciously. Emeric tested it with his hand. A family of beetles left beneath the frame. "The king may have the bed," Jory offered. Emeric watched the beetles depart. "The king declines." Fenella spread blankets beside the hearth. A historic victory for Republican insects. They lit a small fire without royal assistance. Emeric objected that he had improved since the cottage. Fenella handed him damp kindling. He reconsidered proving it. Jory took first watch on the upper floor. The guard slept near the door. Fenella ordered Emeric to remove his shirt beside the fire. "Commander," Emeric called toward the stairs. "I am already looking outside," Jory replied. Fenella peeled the wet bandage from Emeric's shoulder. The puncture had widened. Bruising spread beneath the skin, and the muscles trembled from strain. His inner thigh wound was also swollen from the climb. "Both," she told him. Emeric understood. "The shoulder is sufficient. The shoulder is less embarrassing. That does not make it more important." He looked toward the open stairs. Jory's voice came from above. "The northern stars remain fascinating, Your Majesty." Emeric used a blanket as a privacy screen. Fenella examined the upper leg wound by firelight. It had not reopened, but the deep tissue around it remained tender. Her healing sense moved gently beneath her palm. This time she found the detail that the first emergency treatment had hidden. The final quill had grazed a major vessel before stopping in thick muscle. The injury explained the amount of blood she had found beneath the oak. Exhaustion and dehydration had weakened him, but that slow internal bleeding had brought him close to death. Fenella's face changed. Emeric saw it. "What?" "That last quill came closer to killing you than I understood." His humor faded. "But it did not. Because I threatened you with 6 villagers. A sound medical intervention." Fenella rested her forehead briefly against his knee. The position was awkward and too honest. She had treated the wound as a challenge because panic would not help. Now she could imagine arriving an hour later. Emeric lowered one hand to her hair. "I am here," he said. She nodded and sat back. Then she used the smallest amount of healing warmth to calm the deep inflammation. Pain echoed high in her own thigh. Emeric felt her fingers tense. "Stop." Fenella claimed she was almost finished. "Fenella." His voice carried no royal command. It carried fear for her. She withdrew her hand. Emeric covered the treated leg and pulled her beside him. They sat with their backs against the wall, sharing the blanket while the fire clicked through old pine. "My mother used this tower," Fenella said after a while. "She walked between the hill villages with a case of herbs and no sense of weather." Maeve Mossmere had not possessed a famous bloodline or secret title. She had simply been a skilled rural healer who believed distance was a poor reason to leave someone untreated. During Fenella's 15th winter, Maeve crossed Highwater Bridge during a storm to reach an injured miner. She saved him, caught a fever on the return journey, and died before spring. Fenella learned 2 things from her. Healing required skill, and courage did not excuse foolish preparation. "That is why you carry enough rope for a siege," Emeric observed, "and why I travel with food that remains inside its bag." He accepted the second lesson without defense. Emeric told her about his father. King Aldrin believed people trusted rulers who never hesitated. Emeric had learned to make decisions quickly, then hide the cost of them. When his father died, the crown arrived with 12 packs, 3 border disputes, and a court that watched every breath for weakness. "I know how to lose a battle," Emeric admitted. "I do not know how to arrive late and let everyone call it fear." Fenella understood at last why each roadblock wounded him beyond delay. Halric was not only stealing authority, he was attacking the identity Emeric had built to survive kingship. "A late king can explain," she said. "A cruel king cannot undo the people he abandoned to arrive on time." Emeric wondered whether such a choice would truly come. Halric has spent days arranging one. The fire shifted, sending sparks up the chimney. Wind moved through the broken half of the roof. Fenella took Americ's hand. If he makes you choose, choose the man you want to be. The crown can follow or remain behind. He looked at their joined hands. You say that as though losing it would be simple. It would be terrible. Emeric lifted his gaze. I would still know who you are, Fenella continued. So would Jory. So would everyone you chose to protect instead. Something guarded inside him gave way. Emeric told her he had begun falling in love while she dragged him across roots and complained about his weight. He had fallen farther when she protected his modesty without protecting his pride. Each mile since had made retreat less possible. I love you, he finished. With or without the crown, that part will not change. Fenella's eyes stung. She considered making a joke because jokes had carried them through pain. This moment deserved the truth first. I love you too. Relief softened his face. Fenella touched the bandage near his chest. Unfortunately, I also know how difficult you are to maintain. Emeric offered the royal budget for his maintenance. Your dignity already owes me 7 coppers. I dispute the accounting. She kissed him before he invented royal interest. Emeric's hand settled at the back of her neck. The kiss grew slowly, no longer interrupted by secrets. Warmth replaced the cold echo of her gift. His restraint loosened only when she moved closer. They remained wrapped in one blanket after the kiss. Fenella rested against his chest and listened to his heartbeat slow. Are we courting now? Emeric asked, provisionally. Emeric asked what conditions remained. You must survive Stonegate. You must stop blaming innocent bags and branches. You must learn to cook 1 edible meal. Emeric considered the list. The second condition seems political. It is moral. He questioned the purpose of the meal. A test of character. He kissed her temple. I preferred the assassins. Fenella slept against him until Jory came down at dawn. The commander saw their joined hands, the blanket, and Emeric's expression. He turned toward the hearth. The fire requires inspection, Jory announced. It is out, Fenella noted. A serious condition. Emeric hid a smile in her hair. They left the watchtower after a breakfast of cold bread. The day remained clear, but clouds gathered above Highwater Ridge. Fenella checked Emeric's wounds before they started. He reported unusual discomfort near his ribs. She examined the scar and found nothing. The pain improves when you stand closer, he explained. Fenella understood the diagnosis. Attention-seeking alpha. Chronic. Treatment? She kissed his cheek. Temporary relief only. Emeric looked dissatisfied. I may need a second opinion. Corvin can provide one after Stonegate. The king decided his condition could wait. Their new ease did not remove urgency. They had crossed the river, but the most difficult climb remained. According to Fenella's mother's notes, the road divided near noon. The upper path reached Stonegate Hall directly. The lower path passed beneath Highwater Bridge and climbed to the Gorge Road. The upper path was faster. Halric's final delay waited somewhere ahead. Before the road divided, it passed through a hill settlement called Greystep. 12 stone houses surrounded a public well. Smoke rose from low chimneys, and split slate covered the roofs. The settlement should have been busy preparing carts for Stonegate. Instead, villagers stood in small groups and watched the southern road. Jory hid the royal standard beneath an ordinary canvas wrap. Emeric used his borrowed name and kept his hood raised. Halric's men might have reached Greystep first. Fenella entered openly. Her mother's trail notes named the village midwife, but the woman had moved south years earlier. A young mason now handled simple injuries with more courage than training. He had 3 patients waiting inside the common house. One had a sprained ankle. Another had cut his palm on slate. The third merely believed Worry should receive a bandage. Fenella treated all 3 while Emeric carried water. The worried man explained what troubled Greystep. Riders from Stonegate had announced that the king disappeared after refusing to face northern unrest. Lord Halric promised stability if Emeric failed to attend the meeting. The king does not refuse danger, Emeric said before caution could stop him. The villagers studied the tall stranger holding a bucket. You know him? Fenella tied the man's entirely unnecessary bandage. He has professional experience with stubborn males. Emmerich looked at her. Extensive experience, she added. The Mason reported that 7 pack leaders passed Greystep together shortly after dawn. Their coaches took the lower fork toward Highwater Bridge because the upper road was too steep for Tavin Frost's injured driver. 4 maintenance workers had traveled ahead of them. The men claimed they were inspecting the bridge for the winter meeting. Jory's attention sharpened. Who sent them? Lord Halrick's captain. The answer confirmed Pellin's warning. Halrick's final delay involved the gorge, and 7 leaders were moving directly toward it. Emmerich wanted to leave immediately. Fenella caught the back of his coat before he reached the door. Your shoulder. Emmerich reminded her that 7 leaders were ahead. They will remain ahead if your arm stops working. She changed the bandage in the common house. The villagers gave them privacy by standing behind a thin partition that concealed nothing from the ears. Emmerich lowered his voice. We agreed that medical examinations would become less public. We agreed to provisional courtship. Privacy was not included. I request an amendment. Fenella smoothed salve over the strained muscle. What do you offer? A palace room with a locking door. Fenella dismissed that offer as impractical. A cottage room with a locking door. She considered the cottage offer more useful. He leaned close. The healer may choose which one. Fenella's fingers paused against his skin. The conversation had moved beyond bandages. Behind the partition, someone dropped a cup. Fenella finished the wrap. Amendment under consideration. Emmerich put his shirt back on with a satisfied expression. The settlement offered them food for the road. Fenella accepted bread and onions but refused the villagers' last wheel of cheese. Emmerich quietly left enough coins beneath the well bucket to replace everything twice. He used ordinary copper rather than royal gold, which would have revealed them. As they prepared to leave, the man with the unnecessary bandage approached him. If you really know the king, tell him some of us are waiting before deciding he ran. Emmerich looked across Greystep. These people had received no reliable message from their ruler, only Halrick's convenient certainty. I will tell him, he promised. They left by the northern lane. Beyond the final house, Fenella slipped her hand into his. You wanted to reveal yourself. Emmerich believed the villagers deserved the truth. They deserve a king who reaches the danger before his announcement does. Emmerich squeezed her fingers. The rebuke did not wound because it carried faith in what he could still do. Jory walked several paces ahead, giving them privacy while pretending to examine trees. Fenella glanced at his back. Your commander has inspected half the northern forest. Emmerich predicted an extensive report. Do royal reports normally include kissing? Only strategically relevant kissing. Emmerich stopped beneath a pine and tested the category. Fenella let him kiss her once, brief and warm. Then she pushed an onion into his hand. Carry something useful. He placed it in his pocket. A symbol of our courtship. If you present me with an onion at the palace, I will reconsider everything. They reached the divided road near noon. The upper track climbed through bare rock toward Stonegate Hall. The lower track descended among pines toward Highwater Bridge. Fresh coach marks cut through the lower mud. They found its first sign 2 miles later. A coach stood abandoned beside the lower fork. One wheel had shattered, and pack blue ribbons hung from the door. Blood marked the step, but no bodies remained. Jory recognized the colors of Frostvale, one of the undecided packs. Its alpha, Tavin Frost, should already have been at Stonegate. Fenella touched the blood. It had dried around the edges, but remained dark at the center. The injury was less than 2 hours old. Footprints led toward Highwater Bridge. Emmerich checked the sun. They could follow the upper road and reach the hall shortly before noon. The lower path would cost at least an hour, perhaps more. Fenella said nothing. This was not a choice she could make for him. His attention shifted toward the lower path. We find out what happened. Jory nodded once. They descended. The path opened onto the gorge rim. High-water bridge stretched between two cliffs, a narrow stone span reinforced with wooden braces. White water moved far below. Rain in the mountains had swollen the river into a roaring ribbon. 6 coaches crowded the near approach. Pack guards shouted over one another. Several people pulled ropes toward the ravine. The center of the bridge had collapsed. A section of roadway rested on a shelf of rock 30 feet below the rim. 3 coaches and more than 20 people were trapped there. Water rose through the gorge, cutting off the lower trail. 7 pack leaders had traveled together after meeting at a southern inn. All 7 were on the fallen section. Fenella understood Halrich's choice before anyone explained it. The majority required for a field meeting had been placed together. If the gorge killed them, no rival body could challenge Halrich at Stonegate Hall. If Emeric stopped to help, the official hour would pass without him. Tavin Frost clung to a broken coach below. His right leg lay beneath a beam. 2 other leaders supported an injured guard between them. A woman in red pack colors waved from a narrow ledge farther east. The bridgekeeper rushed toward Emeric. He was a gray-haired beta with dust across his face. "The center supports were sound yesterday," he reported. "Someone removed the locking wedges from the western braces. We found cut ropes below the inspection stairs." Jory asked whether the keeper saw anyone. The beta identified 4 men wearing maintenance cloaks. They arrived with Halrich's captain shortly before dawn. The captain claimed the bridge required a security inspection before the pack convoy crossed. The keeper had objected. They locked him inside the tool shed until the collapse freed the door. This was no natural failure. A Stonegate messenger rode down the upper path. He carried Halrich's instruction that all uninjured leaders continue to the hall. Rescue workers could remain behind. Emeric read the message and tore it in half. "How long until noon?" he asked Jory. "Less than 90 minutes. The messenger shifted nervously. He advised the king to take the upper road. Halrich had already gathered the remaining 5 pack representatives. If Emeric arrived now, he could preserve his authority and send royal engineers afterward. Fenella looked over the edge. One trapped coach shifted as water struck the rock beneath it. Afterward would be too late. Emeric stripped off his coat. "Raise the royal standard here." The messenger stared at him. "Your Majesty, the meeting is wherever 7 leaders and that standard stand. They cannot stand." Emeric looked down at the injured alphas. "Then we help them." Jory planted the wrapped standard beside the tool house. The golden hawk opened in the wind. Emeric's decision moved through the gathered guards. Arguments stopped. People began listening. Fenella took command of the medical side because no one else had created one. She divided uninjured attendants into rope teams, stretcher teams, and warming crews. She ordered blankets spread near the shed and water boiled over 3 fires. One noble guard objected to taking instructions from a village Omega. Fenella handed him a coil of rope. "You may discuss my rank while carrying this." He carried it. Emeric studied the broken span. A surviving maintenance ladder descended partway along the eastern cliff. It ended 12 feet above the first ledge. Someone would have to carry the main rescue line across the gap. In wolf form, Emeric could leap from the ladder to the ledge. In human form, he would need to climb down exposed stone. Fenella saw him calculate. "Your shoulder cannot survive that climb," she said. "The leap is shorter." Fenella reminded him that shifting could reopen the deep leg wound. "I know." He did. For once, he was not ignoring the cost. He was choosing it with clear eyes. Fenella opened her pack and removed the yellow flower recovery trousers. Silence spread across the nearest rope team. Emeric stared at the garment. "No. The padding will protect the old wounds when you land." Emeric noted that 7 pack leaders were watching, then set a responsible example. Jory faced the gorge. His scar had turned red from restraint. His voice dropped. "Fenella, you can wear them, or I can tell everyone why the last quill concerns me." The Alpha King took the trousers. He changed behind an overturned coach. When the enormous black wolf emerged, Yellow flowers covered his hindquarters, and a padded opening surrounded his tail. The bridgekeeper bowed so deeply that his face disappeared. Tavin Frost looked up from below. Even at that distance, his confusion was visible. Fenella fastened the rescue rope around Americ's chest. She checked that it avoided his shoulder wounds and allowed his front legs to move freely. "If the leg fails, stop," she told him. The wolf's amber gaze held hers. "That means stop," Fenella repeated. "Not become more heroic." He touched his nose to her forehead. Then Americ descended the maintenance ladder. Wind pressed the royal standard above him. The gorge filled every pause with thunder. Fenella controlled the rope while Jory and 6 guards anchored it around a stone post. At the final rung, Americ crouched. The ledge weighted 12 feet away and several feet lower. Water moved beneath it, with enough force to tear whole trees apart. He jumped. For one terrible heartbeat, black fur hung against white water. Americ landed with his front paws on the ledge. His hind legs struck the wall. Claws scraped stone, and the flowered trousers caught on a sharp edge. Fenella tightened the rope. Jory's team hauled. Americ found purchase and climbed onto the ledge. The trapped leaders cheered. Tavin stopped after one shout and stared at the yellow flowers. Americ gave him a look that crossed the gorge without difficulty. Fenella began sending down slings in a second line. The first injured guard had a broken arm but could stand. Americ guided him into the sling, and the upper team pulled him to safety. Fenella checked him as soon as he reached the rim. Her gift found no hidden bleeding. She splinted the arm and directed him toward the warming fire. The second rescue involved a beta with a head wound. The third involved an alpha who insisted he could climb alone. Fenella leaned over the edge. "If you fall, I will make your pack retrieve you. Use the sling." The alpha used the sling. Americ moved between ledges, carrying rope and keeping frightened wolves from shifting. His calm presence traveled through the trapped group. He was no longer racing toward a throne. He was already acting as king. The old thigh wound held through the first 6 rescues. During the 7th, the lower coach moved. One wheel slipped from the rock shelf. The coach tilted toward the river, with Tavin still pinned beneath its broken side. Americ threw his weight against the frame. The black wolf braced all 4 paws on wet stone. The coach stopped tilting. Pain struck through his hind leg. Fenella felt a faint echo through the bond created by repeated healing contact. It was not mind reading or magic communication. It was only the familiar warning of tissue under strain. "His leg is reopening," she told Jory. They had rescued 11 people. 9 remained below. The eastern ledge began to crumble. Fenella tied a rope around her waist. Jory saw her. "No. Tavin's leg is trapped. Americ cannot hold the coach and free him." Jory suggested sending a guard. "The space beneath the beam is narrow, and I can identify where his leg is broken." Jory looked toward Americ. The wolf's paws slid another inch. The commander attached a second safety line to Fenella's harness. "His Majesty will remove my head. Only if we fail." "That is not comforting." Fenella climbed down the maintenance ladder. Wind pulled loose hair across her eyes. At the last rung, she did not have Americ's leap. The rope team lowered her until her boots reached the ledge. Americ saw her and produced a growl that shook the coach frame. "You are occupied," Fenella told him. His ears flattened. "We can argue after I save your political opponent." Tavin Frost lay beneath a beam, pale with pain. His lower leg bent at an unnatural angle, but Fenella's healing sense found steady blood flow below the injury. Moving the beam without supporting the break could drive bone through skin. She built a quick splint around the exposed section before attaching a lifting rope. The trapped pack leaders helped. At Fenella's count, the upper team pulled the beam while 3 alphas lifted from below. Tavin came free. The coach lurched. Americ jumped away as the remaining wheel left the shelf. Wood struck the gorge wall and vanished into the river. The sudden release threw him onto his injured side. Fenella reached him first. His breathing remained steady, but blood darkened the yellow flowers near his left leg. "I am never letting you select medical clothing again," Americ's expression informed her. "You can complain after the rescue." They secured Tavin in a stretcher sling. The upper team raised him carefully. Fenella climbed beside him for the first 10 feet, keeping the splint aligned. When he reached the rim, the trapped leader caught her wrist. "The flowers," he managed through pain. "Are they royal?" Fenella looked down at Americ. "They are now." Tavin laughed once and regretted it. Rain began before the final rescues. It came cold and slanting from the ridge. Stone turned slick beneath every foot. Americ could no longer jump between ledges. His left hind leg shook when he placed weight on it. Fenella's own strength was fading. Each rescued person brought another injury to assess. She used her gift only 3 times, reserving it for possible internal bleeding. The last trapped woman could not reach the main ledge. A new crack had opened between her position and Americ. Fenella studied the ropes. They had no swinging harness long enough to reach her from above. Americ lowered himself onto his belly and took the spare line in his teeth. He crawled along a narrow shelf until his front paws reached the crack. The woman extended one arm. Several feet remained between them. Fenella tied herself to the royal wolf's harness. "Absolutely not," Jory told her. "We need more reach." Before he could stop her, Fenella slid along Americ's back. She hooked one leg around the rescue rope and stretched beyond his shoulder. Her fingers closed around the woman's wrist. Americ backed away one painful step at a time. Jory's team pulled the harness. Together, they brought the final leader across the gap. When all 3 reached the main ledge, the narrow shelf collapsed into the river. Fenella sat in the rain with her arms around Americ's neck. The wolf trembled beneath her. "That was the last one," she promised. His amber eyes accused her of reckless behavior. "You fought a porcupine." The accusation weakened. The upper team raised Fenella first because Americ refused to enter his sling until she was safe. She reached the rim and immediately supervised his ascent. The flower-clad royal wolf swung above the gorge. 7 pack leaders, 30 guards, and 1 delighted bridgekeeper watched in silence. Jory leaned toward Fenella. "No one will believe a private report, then write a public one." Americ reached solid ground and collapsed beside the royal standard. Fenella knelt at his flank. She cut away the torn recovery trousers before anyone could request preservation. The inner thigh wound had opened, but the vessel remained intact. His shoulder needed stitching again. "Human form," she instructed. "Slowly." Americ shifted behind a wall of blankets held by Jory's guards. The change left him pale and shaking. Fenella wrapped him in a dry cloak and began treating the leg. Tavin lay on a stretcher nearby. Rain ran from his hair, and his face remained gray. He watched Fenella work on the king before speaking. "How long until the meeting?" Jory checked the sun behind the clouds. "Noon passed during the rescue." The words moved through the camp. Americ closed his eyes. He had known the cost when he descended the ladder. Hearing it still hurt. Tavin looked toward the standard snapping above them. 6 other rescued leaders rested within the warming area. 7 leaders are present, he said. So is the king. The woman from the eastern ledge raised her bandaged hand. "And the standard." Jory understood first. He ordered the bridgekeeper's shed cleared and the pack banners brought from the damaged coaches. Americ opened his eyes. "You are injured. The meeting can wait." Tavin gave him a tired smile. "It already did." Fenella finished the king's bandage. "Can you sit upright without attempting heroism?" "Define heroism." Fenella defined heroism as anything that caused fresh bleeding. "Then yes." She helped him to the shed. The first lawful field meeting in 80 years began beside a broken bridge. Its table was an overturned door. Its chairs included supply crates, stones, and 2 stretchers. The royal standard stood in a bucket filled with gravel. No one complained about dignity. The 7 leaders confirmed their identities and voted to recognize the gorge as the winter meeting site. They heard the bridgekeeper's account and Jory's report about the road attacks. Pellin's confession had been given before guards and another prisoner. The captured cottage rogues could confirm the same delay order. The evidence did not yet prove Halric personally removed the bridge wedges. It proved his captain directed both the pursuit and the false maintenance crew. That was enough to suspend Halric's temporary authority until a joint inquiry. Before the vote ended, Jory sent formal notice of the field meeting toward Stonegate Hall. A lookout relayed the message from the upper ridge. Hoofbeats sounded on the road soon afterward. Halric arrived with 20 palace guards and the 5 representatives who had waited at Stonegate Hall. He wore a dark ceremonial cloak over traveling clothes. His face remained calm until he saw 7 living leaders beneath the royal standard. Then he saw Emeric beside Fenella. Finally, he saw the wet yellow flower trousers hanging from a rescue rope. The moment damaged 3 separate ambitions. Halric recovered quickly. He declared the field meeting invalid because noon had passed before the leaders formally assembled. Tavin asked why the Lord Protector had not brought rescue workers after learning the bridge collapsed. Halric claimed his responsibility was preserving order at the hall. The woman from the eastern ledge asked whether order mattered more than 7 trapped leaders. Halric called the collapse an unfortunate accident. He blamed the bridgekeeper for failing to inspect the western support wedges after the rain. The old beta stepped forward. Then how did you know the western wedges were missing? Halric had not mentioned wedges aloud. Silence spread beneath the rain. His captain moved toward the horses. Jory blocked him. A triangular nail pattern marked the captain's boots, matching the tracks beyond the ferry. Red cloth protruded from his saddlebag. The captain drew a knife. Emeric started to rise. Fenella pressed one hand against his good shoulder. You are bleeding, she reminded him. He has a knife. Jory has a sword and fewer holes. The commander disarmed the captain in 2 movements. Halric backed toward the bridge approach. His guards did not follow. They had watched Emeric abandon the meeting deadline to save rival alphas. None wished to seize that king for a man who remained in a dry hall. Fenella saw Halric's heel near a loose rescue rope. He reached inside his cloak. She stepped on the rope and pulled. The loop tightened around Halric's ankle. He fell backward into a patch of mud beside the shed. His hidden dagger slid across the ground. Emeric looked at Fenella. He was standing in a dangerous place, she explained. A recurring political condition, Tavin observed from his stretcher. Jory bound Halric and his captain. The 5 late-arriving representatives joined the field meeting after speaking with their rescued leaders. The final vote was unanimous. Emeric remained Alpha King. Halric was removed as Lord Protector and held for a joint investigation by all 12 packs. There was no triumphant roar. The gorge still contained wounded people, a broken bridge, and rain that showed no respect for political conclusions. The meeting ended so everyone could return to useful work. They spent that night in the bridgekeeper's sheds. The rain stopped near dusk. Fires burned along the gorge rim, warming rescued travelers and drying clothes. Pack cooks combined their supplies into a stew containing 6 kinds of root and no agreement about salt. Fenella moved between the injured until her legs shook. Most wounds were bruises, cuts, and simple fractures. Taven's leg required careful setting, but the splint had prevented further damage. Emeric followed her beneath a gray blanket. He had been ordered to rest beside the royal standard. He interpreted rest as walking 3 steps behind his healer and sitting whenever she turned around. After the 4th patient, Fenella pointed toward his palate. You are leaking through the bandage. Emeric looked down. A minor administrative issue. Your blood has joined politics now? Everything near a king becomes political. Fenella took him back to the pallet. She changed the wrap and found no serious damage. The old vessel remained safe, though the muscle would punish him for several days. Emeric watched her tired hands. You used your gift too often. 3 times. Emeric added her climb into the gorge. That was ordinary recklessness. It does not count as magic. He drew her down beside him. Fenella intended to resist until her head reached his shoulder. Then the fire felt warm, the blanket felt dry, and his arm felt like a reasonable medical support. Jory brought 2 bowls of stew. He placed them nearby without commenting on the king holding his healer. "Commander," Emeric called as he left. Jory stopped. "Thank you." The simple gratitude surprised both men. Jory bowed his head, then returned to the guards. Fenella tasted the stew. "Too much salt." Emeric tried his portion. "It is edible. That is not the same as good." Emeric claimed his future cooking improved by comparison. "We have not agreed that you possess a future in cooking." He kissed her temple. "You agreed to provisional courtship. That is not a kitchen license." Emeric appeared willing to negotiate. Fenella silenced him with a spoonful of stew. They slept beside the fire. For the first time since the oak, neither expected an attack before morning. The investigation that followed remained direct. The bridgekeeper and maintenance workers identified Halrich's captain. Pellin and the cottage rogues described the delay orders before representatives from different packs. The missing ferry crank was found in the captain's supply wagon. His men had also carried saws marked with pale dust from the quarry obstruction. Halrich denied ordering murder. His captain admitted the bridge plan after learning the 7 leaders survived and could testify against him. The 12 packs judged the case together. Halrich lost his title and estates, and he was sentenced to labor restoring the roads he had blocked. His captain received imprisonment for attempted murder. Emeric did not make a speech about changing the kingdom. He returned to Highwater Gorge with engineers. Stonegate leaders supplied workers from their own packs. The bridgekeeper chose the new supports, and every pack inspected its section before the road reopened. Fenella remained at the gorge for 3 weeks because injured workers and travelers needed treatment. She used the bridgekeeper's shed as a temporary clinic. Emeric remained because his leg required care. That was his official reason. His leg stopped requiring daily care after the first week. He continued reporting stiffness every morning. Fenella examined the scar on the 8th day. No swelling. It aches when you are distant. Fenella pointed out that the problem was not located in his leg. The body is connected in mysterious ways. She placed 2 fingers over his heart. The problem appears to be here. "Can it be treated?" Fenella kissed him once. "Return tomorrow if symptoms persist." Emeric returned before breakfast. Their courtship settled around practical work. He carried beams when the builders lacked hands. Nothing. Stirred too slowly and created a substance capable of supporting a roof tile. The builders ate it because Emeric stood nearby. Fenella saved them after 3 bites. Courage does not require this. Emeric tasted his own work and dismissed the pot from royal service. Attempt 2 burned. Attempt 3 escaped into the fire. Attempt 4 was thin enough to drink from a cup. On attempt 5, Fenella finished an entire bowl without identifying a structural use for it. Emeric watched closely. "Have I passed?" "You have achieved food." Emeric noted that producing food had been the requirement. "Barely." He pulled her between his knees while sitting on a timber. "Does barely earn a kiss?" Fenella kissed the corner of his mouth. "Barely." Emeric completed the kiss with royal thoroughness. Workers discovered urgent tasks on the opposite side of the bridge. The repaired span opened before the first snow. Instead of a formal ceremony, the 7 rescued leaders crossed together. Emeric and Fenella followed at the back. Halfway across, Taven stopped beside the replaced center stones. He still used a cane, but his leg was healing well. "I owe both of you my life," he told them. Emeric glanced at Fenella. She issued most of the orders. "He wore most of the flowers," Fenella added. Taven's smile widened. He had commissioned a small yellow flower on the underside of the new bridge marker. Travelers would not see it unless they knew where to look. Emeric discovered it 5 minutes later. "Remove that." Taven leaned on his cane. "It supports historical accuracy." The bridgekeeper sided with the Alpha. Jory claimed the marker had already become part of the structure. Fenella refused to overrule trained builders. Emeric crossed the rest of the bridge in dignified isolation. He was less isolated after dark, when Fenella joined him in the small room above the keeper's house. Wind moved beyond the shutters. Fresh wood and clean wool scented the room. Emeric asked permission before kissing her. Fenella answered by pulling him closer. They spent the night together beneath a heavy quilt. Their intimacy remained warm rather than explicit. They kissed, talked, and learned the quiet comfort of falling asleep without a crisis between them. Fenella woke with her cheek against his chest. Emeric was already awake, tracing slow circles over her shoulder. "Your heart is elevated," she murmured. "You are in my bed." Fenella recognized the cause and declared treatment unnecessary. "I disagree." His suggested treatment delayed breakfast. When the road reopened, Fenella returned to her cottage. Emeric returned to Hawkridge Palace because 12 packs had produced 12 sets of delayed work. They did not pretend distance was romantic. He visited twice each week when weather allowed. Fenella traveled to the palace when patients did not need her. They argued about schedules, learned where compromise hurt least, and refused to turn longing into evidence that one life mattered more. The broken roadside shelter near the ferry needed rebuilding. Emeric offered royal funds. Fenella asked for something more useful than another monument. Together, they planned a rescue house beside the charcoal road. It would hold blankets, rope, food, splints, and a warm room for travelers caught by weather. Fenella agreed to manage it with Beren and 2 trained assistants. The house remained independent, supported by toll money from the repaired bridge rather than palace orders. This was not a sweeping law. It was one roof in the right place. Emeric helped raise the beams. He claimed the work allowed him to inspect the road. Everyone noticed his inspections occurred when Fenella served lunch. One afternoon, she found him studying the cottage door. "It still sticks," he observed. "A giant wolf damaged the frame." Emeric defended the animal as medically distressed. The animal also destroyed a pillow, a hook, and a branch. Emeric presented a new brass hook from his pocket. "Partial payment." Fenella accepted it. "You still owe 4 coppers. I am prepared to discuss another form of settlement." His kiss covered only part of the debt. Fenella kept the balance open for strategic reasons. He proposed beside the oak on a clear autumn morning. Fenella had come to gather wintergreen. Emeric had come wearing a formal black coat beneath an ordinary travel cloak, which meant he had spent the journey pretending not to carry a ring. He stopped where she had first found him. Sunlight moved through yellow leaves and warmed the moss. "No guards?" Fenella asked. "Jory is beyond the ridge. He claims the trees need inspection." "A serious condition." Emeric took her hands. He did not promise a perfect life or a court without difficulty. He promised to respect her work, ask before deciding for her, and remember that protecting someone did not mean controlling them. He wanted her laughter in his home and her judgment beside his crown. He wanted arguments about tents, porridge, roads, and every strange injury still waiting in their future. Then he knelt and opened a wooden ring box. The ring was gold with a green stone like a new leaf. "Fenella Mossmere, will you marry me?" Leaves rustled behind him. Emeric became very still. A porcupine emerged from the hazel bushes and entered the clearing. It was smaller than he remembered. This did not improve his opinion. Fenella looked from the ring to the animal. "Would your majesty prefer higher ground?" Emeric rose without turning his back on the porcupine. He moved one measured step behind her. "I am respecting its boundaries." Fenella asked whether boundary management had to interrupt his proposal. A king must manage several responsibilities. The porcupine crossed the path without interest. Emeric waited until it disappeared before facing Fenella again. His composure had developed a crack. Fenella loved him for the king who chose the gorge, the wolf who wore flowers, and the man willing to look foolish beside her. "Yes," she answered, "I will marry you." Emeric placed the ring on her finger. His relief lasted until Fenella added one condition. "No porcupine decorations at the wedding." Emeric agreed immediately. "No quill-shaped cakes." He accepted the cake restriction too. "No yellow flower trousers beneath your formal coat." Emeric looked offended. "Those were destroyed." Fenella knew where she had stored them. She did not confess. Their wedding took place beside the completed rescue house in early spring. Pack leaders stood with villagers, bridge workers, and Fenella's former patients. The ceremony remained simple. Emeric wore black and gold. Fenella wore deep green with wintergreen leaves embroidered along the sleeves. They spoke vows built around choice rather than rank. Emeric promised to listen before protecting. Fenella promised to tell him when his dignity became medically dangerous. Their mating mark came only after Fenella gave clear consent. It was gentle, private, beneath her collar, and followed by a kiss that made the gathered packs cheer. Jory presented them with one wedding gift from the bridge leaders. Inside a polished wooden case stood the glass jar containing all 83 quills. A brass label read, "The first obstacle their majesties survived together." Emeric examined the wording. The porcupine was not a political obstacle. Tavin raised his cup. It delayed you more effectively than Halric. The bridge leaders toasted the porcupine. Fenella kissed her husband's cheek before he could remove anyone's title. Marriage did not cure Emeric's mysterious symptoms. If anything, they became more frequent. One summer evening, he entered Fenella's treatment room at the rescue house and reported discomfort near an old scar. She checked his side. This healed months ago. The pain returns near sunset. Fenella asked whether his wife's touch improved the condition. Remarkably. Fenella folded her arms. My professional fee has increased. Emeric placed 3 kisses across her knuckles. Advance payment. She drew him closer by the collar. Their next kiss scattered 2 clean bandages and knocked a cup onto the table. Outside the open window, dry leaves rustled. Emeric lifted his head. A porcupine wandered beside the rescue house, inspected a patch of roots, and continued toward the trees. I am not afraid of it, he stated. Fenella rested against his chest. Naturally. I simply refuse to let it participate in our marriage. She glanced at the evidence case above her desk. The 83 quills caught the evening light. It may be too late for that. Emeric followed her gaze and noticed a fold of yellow flower fabric behind the case. His eyes narrowed. Fenella kissed him before he could investigate. The porcupine disappeared safely into the bright summer woods, while the Alpha King chose love over recovering his dignity. Thank you for listening to Moonlit Romance Tales. I hope this story brought you a little laughter, warmth, and a peaceful moment in a world that can sometimes feel heavy. If you enjoyed this tale, please like, subscribe, and share it to spread more happiness. I'll see you in the next one.